Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Just caught my finger on the zoom. We don't want that. I'm going to have a go at repotting this Rawdon Jester. I can see root activity. It's been in the pot a long time, and the previous attempt at growing new roots was lost on the grounds a slug chewed them off. Well, at the moment we've got two new growths. I doubt if there's a very good root system on this. Correct. It's a lousy root system, but as I said, we do have new roots just starting. The only purpose these old roots are serving, apart from that one perhaps, is to hold it in the pot. Can't see them doing much really. I don't know, these are active, or possibly. Huge wodge of dead ones in the middle. In fact, most of these are dead, quite honestly. So when you have to come round here, like, we've got a few active ones round here, but not many. And I think I'm just going to take all of these dead ones off. I know it seems like a lot, but there's nothing going on in this area as far as the roots are concerned. Just gone. It doesn't leave much, but right, so we've got moss at the base of the plant, which I want off. And hey presto, as soon as you move the moss, you can see the live roots starting. Not many, but get these dead ones out of the way. Let's see what I'm doing. To excuse the noise in the background, as I say, there's workmen in the next garden along doing building works and stuff. I think what it is, because they're up near the house, which is actually quite a long way, and I think when they decide to break for lunch they walk down the garden, which means they're just the other side of the hedge, so their voices seem really loud. Well, they do to me anyway, but I'm not waiting for it all to go quiet and do things like that. I'm not revolving my life around other people's workload. That would be silly. That's as much as I'm going to take off, because I just don't want to damage any live stuff. Still unknown why this won't bloom. Well, that might explain why it might not bloom, because it feels very much like there's two plants. In fact, there's two plants there. Well, that'll explain why it's not blooming, because these need to get to a fair size before they reach bloom. Yeah, it's definitely two plants. Well, if it's going to be two plants, let's make it two plants. I might even pop these up separately. When in bloom, these command a high price, and they would be, if I took it to an orchid society in bloom, there would be demand for it, let's put it that way. We'll take that back bulb off. Takes a few more dead roots off, which is good. Right, so this one has got the start of some new roots. These are just all dead here. But then, there's a tiny little shoot there, that's a new root. You've got to go careful. At the expense of leaving a few dead roots on, if you've snipped your tips off of your only live ones, it would be better to leave the dead ones on. I'm just getting the sheaths out of the way while I'm there. And this one's never had scale, but that doesn't mean to say it won't. Right, you see this root's gone upwards, and I mean that's got several branches on it. That's going to get potted because I can bend that without it breaking, I think. So that will go down in the pot, and hopefully the branches will then migrate outwards. So that's one piece with a nice strong new growth with signs of new roots at the base. So that's piece number one. And what does that leave me with on? Piece number two's got the much stronger growth. And again we've got new roots coming at the base, so that will pull on quite nicely, that piece. I'm going to take one of those old bulbs off just so that it'll go in a smaller pot. No, these roots are just falling apart. They have ceased to be. See, now that leaves virtually no roots at all on this piece, but we've got new roots coming. Nice green tips. So, you know, it's going to replace its root system very soon. And it's survived with very few roots all this time without dropping its leaves. So it's obviously capable of surviving for some time on its reserves. I mean, these bulbs haven't shriveled, you know, they're still a good size. They haven't shriveled up despite not having good roots to feed them. So, come on, off you come. Right, so yet again another piece. Now, I think I will put these in separate pots. They'll probably need, well, they will need staking. They're not going to support themselves, are they? They're very top heavy, very large leaves, and blow me, I've just seen some scale on one of the leaves. We'll have them while I can see them. It's only a few, just along a leaf joint. You can see the whole of the rest of the underside. There's no more, it's just those few. So now that had an awful lot of ventilation in it, and it was still soaking wet. Signs of mould growing on the media, which is a sure sign it's getting old, and smells of mushrooms. So we could say that might have been just in time, but I'll have a clean up and then find myself some pots. They need to be of a similar size. I've got a feeling, given the size of the pseudo bulbs and the vigour of the new growths coming on, that they could well produce a reasonable root system this time round, and we won't have any slugs munching them off this time. So you know, I'm surprised the plant's done this well, considering it lost its whole new root system on the last two growths. Anyway, I'll be back. Right, it's doing something a bit different. I've got two pots the same. They've got good sized drainage holes in, but they're quite wide and flat. I don't have many of these, but they're not air cone pots, but they're quite wide and flat. We'll have some crocking, make sure it doesn't stay soggy in the bottom. Now you have to bear in mind what I'm doing here is I'm potting up orchids with virtually no root system. So when I pour water in the media, how quickly is the orchid going to use up the water? The answer is it's not, is it? Because it's yet to establish a decent root system. So I don't want the media staying too wet. So I'm not mixing any moss in. I know later in life the orchid might benefit from staying a bit moist, but at the moment what it was in was staying too wet. So all I'm going to do is put this in the new bark that I got. This came from Sarah, and she said it's pretty good stuff, and if it wasn't so expensive they'd be using it all the time. But she said it's selective use. It does have some muck in it, like sticks. Well, and in one case, as you saw when I first opened it, it had a log in it. So, you know, I am going through it, just making sure I don't put any of the real rubbish in the pots. You know, a few twigs here and there and a bit of grass. It's not the end of the world, is it really? Right, Now these will probably need staking, which might mean I have to stop halfway through. Now if those two bulbs go right at the back, which is more important, the storage of the old back bulbs, the position of the plant in the pot, or the bulbs with the leaves on that feed the plant? And I think I'm going to take that off. That way I can get that part of the plant right up against the back of the pot and leave it plenty of room for the future. A nice piece of rhizome there, nice and clean. It's what we like. Right, so we can now put that at the back, up against the side of the pot. The new growth will be right in the middle of the pot, yeah? And it means wherever the next new growth comes out from, it will be fine. So, and I'm potting it deep. I'm potting it deep, it's got no roots. Next time, if it does develop a really good root system, it can be potted higher in the pot. But at the moment, it's just sitting on this media. That's all it can do. And I haven't piled loads in behind, round the back of the plant, like I often do, simply because there's nothing growing there. There are no roots. So all we need is enough round the base of the plant that any new roots coming out go down into that media. Now, believe it or not, that's actually going to stay there. But I wouldn't trust it to stay there. So I'm going to put a stake in there and tie it. Nice sturdy stake. Unfortunately, I just need a few extra bits. I'll be back. Right, I forgot I was going to use a stake. Let me just move that camera around a bit. I've got my glow-in-the-dark raffia. Horrible stuff. It's nothing like the green in the picture. And this stake's got two blunt ends, so I've just got my secateurs so that I can put a point on. Just basically put a point on it so that it'll go in the media a little bit better. So that's just, that'll do. And obviously I'm not going to go anywhere near the new growth, which means I need to stake an old part of the plant. And the easiest thing, I think, will be to stake that there. So we go down like that. Notice I put the stake in at an angle so that it's very close to the plant where the pseudo bulb meets the leaves. There's a reason for that, because that's the narrowest place, and that's a very good place to tie. And it will stay there because, you know, it goes upwards with the leaves and outwards with the pseudo bulb, so the raffia can't slide up or down, can it? It's stuck where I put it, which is what I want. Right, so we'll go around the stake once. Probably got my shoulder in the way. Go around the stake once, and then we'll just cross over around the back of that area of the plant, come back round and tie off. But that's all it needs. As long as the stake doesn't wobble, that's got the plant. Because, you know, all the pseudo bulbs are joined together, so you only need to hold one still. You know, you don't need to try and hold them all. They'll hold each other against that one. And nip the ends off, makes it look a bit neater and tidier. Right, so we've got bark round the base of the plant where the new roots will come from, and not much round the back of the plant where there are no roots. Now this bark is quite dirty, so that'll have a hell of a watering now, which I always just use the filtered water in the kitchen. You know, it's tap water that's gone through a filter, and I use that to flush the bark. Now this bit has got some roots on, including this one, which I want to try and get. It has actually got a break in it, but nonetheless it could still grow, so I want to get that in the media, because the branches, even if the main one, it might get going. So again, we want the new growth pointing towards the middle of the pot. Nothing too much around the back. No great big air holes, but without a huge amount of old roots there won't be air holes because there's nothing to hold up the new media going in. Notice I didn't do any pressing down or anything. This bark just goes where you put it, basically. Doesn't leave many air gaps or anything. Now again, I think I ought to stake it. But this time I will have to stake the big bulb. Right, let's see what we'll find down here. Huge big long one. Which we don't need that. I don't want to poke myself in the eye in the future. So to decide how long it needs to be, put it in where it's going to go, like that. And then you know where you're going to tie it, just cut it off. Now you won't poke yourself in the eye. Very easy to do, believe it or not, is actually poke yourself with a stake that's sticking up, because when you pick a plant up, you tend to be looking at the plant, which is often like near the top of the pot. That's not where the stake is going to poke you in the eye, unfortunately. Right, again, I'll just put one round the stake opposite the place where I want to tie. And we cross over round the base of those leaves and just pull that in. There we go. Right. Now what we've actually got is two quite small plants. So what I've probably done is made it even more difficult for these to bloom, because they're now smaller plants than they were before. But the plant wasn't growing before because it didn't have a root system, so it was on hold. It was surviving, not pulling forward. Luckily it kept its leaves, which is good. That's because I left the door open. It's the humidifier firing up. Yeah, so we'll have to see what this does now. As I said, I'm hoping that the new growths will generate a decent root system, even though... See, what should be happening really is these new roots should be adding to the last lot of new roots, which would still be actively feeding the plant. They will have long finished growing, but they'd have been good roots. They wouldn't have rotted or anything due to old media or anything like that. They'd have still been good. And then this new root system from these latest two growths would have added to the root system, providing an awful lot more strength for the plants. So there we go. Where there was one, there's now two. This is a nuisance, this bulb. I wonder if that's worth trying to strap. No, it'll break the bulb. The bulb's just grown at a funny angle, and these leaves are a nuisance because they hang out. They're not upright. I mean, that's how the plant should grow, really. Right, so a good soaking, give them a good clean off, and I'll let you know now the list of plants to repot. I've just gone through that list. There's only one plant here. Most, if not all, of the rest are getting left. It's the wrong time of year. They're not in a good position to be repotted, so they're going on hold. None of them are in totally breaking down media, so none of them would be an emergency repot. They would come under the category of a precautionary repot on the grounds that they've been in the pot a while and the media's starting to get a bit old and tired, but it's not gone off, it's not falling apart, it's not highly acidic, so they're not an emergency repot. And this is not a good time of year under normal circumstances to be doing repots. You've got the heat, you've got the long days. So the plants are having to work hard this time of year. So it's not a good idea to put them under stress, is it? I mean, I've got a Miltonia over there that's down for a repot. Well, it's currently in full bloom. And at this time of year, no. So it's going to have to wait. It's in the cocoa husk. That's why it's classed as a relative priority, because I don't know how long that stuff lasts. Well, I'm not using it anymore, so I don't need to know. There will still be some orchids that will do best in that cocoa husk. So some will eventually get their cocoa husk replaced, and not replaced with something else, replaced with new. But to do that, I've got to actually get some more ready, because I've used up all the prepared stuff. And as you know, it needs a hell of a rinse, well, quite a few rinses to clean it out and get all the salts and everything out and make it ready for our orchids. And I haven't done that yet. So anyway, that's one repot out of the way. I'll mark that one off. And as I said, we've now got 2 plants where there was 1. And let's see how they push on now. What I'd like to see in the not too distant future is nice root tips coming out to the side of the pot about halfway down. That would be wonderful. We shall see. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by.